Hello and welcome. Today we are not talking about a match. We are not talking about statistics or wins or losses. We are talking about a moment so powerful it stopped time. A moment that reminded everyone, all at once, why they fell in love with this story. The arena was already electric. The main event had been set. The champion was in the ring, arrogant, dominant, holding the title aloft. The crowd was booing, playing their part in the drama. Everything was exactly as it was supposed to be. And then the lights went out. A complete, sudden, terrifying darkness. It was a technical glitch, people thought. A mistake. You could hear the nervous laughter, the shuffling of feet. The champion in the ring looked confused, annoyed. Then, a single, piercing note. A sound nobody had heard in this building for 5 long years. The crowd went silent. Not a boo, not a cheer. The silence of sudden, impossible realization. And then, flames burst from the ramp. Red and gold, they licked the sky, pushing back the darkness with a percussive whoosh that you felt in your chest. Lights flashed in time with a heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. A rhythm of anticipation. And then, she appeared, the silhouette, unmistakable, standing at the top of the ramp, head down. The building didn't just cheer, it detonated. The sound that erupted was not human. It was a physical force, a tidal wave of thousands of people screaming, crying, and celebrating all at once. The sound was so loud it distorted the broadcast feed. The hard cam was visibly shaking. This wasn't just a return. This wasn't a nostalgia pop. This was a catharsis. This was 5 years of what if and I wish being answered, live, right in front of them. She lifted her head. The camera zoomed in, a small, knowing smile. The crowd couldn't contain themselves. The loudest pop of the night? This was the loudest pop of the decade. Grown men, faces painted for the current champion, were openly weeping. Strangers were grabbing each other, jumping up and down, pointing, unable to form words. They were just screaming. "She's back! She's really back!" This wasn't just a return. This was history being made right in front of our eyes. This was the ghost walking out of the fog and proving she was real. And in the ring, the champion's smug expression had melted. It was gone. Replaced by something else. Something raw. It was pure, unfiltered shock. Let's pause on that moment. Freeze the frame. Look past the pyro, past the star. Look into the audience. There, in the 3rd row. A young woman, mascara running down her face, her hands clamped over her mouth. She is looking at her hero, the person she thought was gone forever. She is not just a fan, she is a witness. 4 rows back, a father is holding his young son on his shoulders. The son is too young to understand the history. He's just excited by the noise. But the father is crying. He is pointing, trying to explain to his son, "That's her. That's the one I told you about." This is the secondary explosion. The emotional one. The one that happens inside everyone. The commentary team was silent. Not because the producers told them to be, but because they couldn't speak. What could they say? What words could possibly add to this? The story was telling itself. The sheer primal volume of the audience was the commentary. You see, she hadn't just retired. She had vanished. At the absolute peak of her powers, no explanation, no farewell tour, just gone. It left a wound. A question mark that hung over the entire division, over the entire company, for half a decade. Every champion who came after her was just a placeholder. Every next big thing was just a pale imitation. And now, the original had returned. The signs that fans had hopefully, pathetically, brought to every single show for 5 years just in case, those signs were now being held aloft, trembling. They weren't just welcoming back a star. They were welcoming back hope. While 20,000 people were losing their minds, a different kind of scene was unfolding backstage. In the gorilla position, the small, crowded area just behind the curtain, a group of other performers were huddled around a single monitor. The audio feed was clipping, just a wall of static from the crowd's roar. They watched the silhouette appear. Silence. No one cheered here. No one high-fived. This was not a celebration. This was a new variable. This was chaos. One producer just slowly took off his headset, rubbing his eyes, as if to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Another simply said, "Oh my God, they actually did it." The other women in the division, the ones who had to compete tomorrow, the ones fighting for TV time. Their faces were a complex mask of emotions. Some saw inspiration, a legend to learn from. But most saw a roadblock, a glass ceiling they thought they were about to shatter, suddenly reinforced with steel. Their path just got infinitely harder. And then there was the champion. In the ring, her face was shock. But as she stood there, watching the icon walk slowly, deliberately down that long ramp, the shock began to curdle. It turned to something else, a cold, defensive anger. She had spent 5 years building this division. She had carried the company on her back. This was her house, her era. And this ghost had just returned to reclaim a throne the champion felt she had earned. In the production truck, it was chaos. Not the chaos of failure, but the chaos of an overwhelming, terrifying success. They knew she was coming. Of course they did. It was the most closely guarded secret in the company's history. But they hadn't anticipated this. They had planned for a big moment. They had planned for a nice reaction, a setup for a future match, a boost in the ratings. They had not planned for a religious experience. The senior producer was on the headset shouting, "Scrap the post-show. Get a camera on her. Get a camera on the champ. Follow them both. I don't care where they go. Follow them." Every plan they had for the next 6 months was instantly obsolete. The entire narrative architecture of the company, the planned main events, the rivalries they were carefully building, all of it was incinerated by the flames on that ramp. This one moment had changed the entire trajectory of the business. The pressure was immediate. They had caught lightning in a bottle. Now they had to hold it. Now they had to deliver a story worthy of this reaction. The return was the easy part. The story was now a monster. One writer, looking at the screen, whispered to his colleague, "How do we book this? How do we possibly write a sequel to that?" The colleague didn't look away from the monitor. "We don't. We just survive it." The next day, it was everywhere. It wasn't just on the wrestling blogs. It was the #1 trending topic on the planet. It was the lead story on mainstream sports networks. Anchors who usually talked about basketball and football were stumbling over their words, trying to explain to their audience why a person walking onto a stage was causing this global meltdown. The clip. That one clip. The pyro, the silhouette, the sound. It was replayed, analyzed, dissected. People who hadn't watched wrestling in 20 years were texting their old friends. "Did you see it? She's back." It transcended the industry. It became a cultural flashpoint, a story about comeback, about unfinished business, about the power of a single, perfectly executed surprise in a world where nothing is a surprise anymore. The company's social media engagement was up 5,000%. Their stock price jumped 8 points at the opening bell. But with all that attention came a new, crushing weight. The entire world was watching now. The bubble was gone. The casual fans, the mainstream press, the critics, they were all waiting to see what happened next. This was no longer a story for the fans. It was a story for everyone. And the pressure of that kind of expectation, it can forge diamonds, or it can crush souls. The icon's return wasn't just a moment in the show. It became the show. It became the company. And a single person can only carry that much weight for so long. 200 miles away from the media storm, there was a quiet house on a quiet street. Inside, the icon, the person, not the persona, sat at her kitchen table. Her ring gear was in a pile by the door. Her body ached in places she hadn't felt in 5 years. Her phone was on the table. It had been vibrating, buzzing, and chiming without pause for 12 hours. Hundreds of texts, thousands of notifications, voicemails from people she hadn't spoken to in years, agents, movie producers, talk shows. She hadn't answered a single one. She was just stirring a cup of tea, staring at the wood grain on the table. Her mother walked into the room, sitting opposite her. She didn't look proud or excited. She looked worried. She had been the one to help her daughter piece her life back together when she left. She had watched her heal, physically and mentally. She had watched her find peace. "Was it worth it?" her mother asked, quietly. The icon looked up. Her eyes were tired. Not the triumphant eyes from the ramp. The eyes of someone who just signed a contract they weren't sure they should have. "I don't know yet," she whispered. The world saw a hero's return. Her family saw a wound being reopened. She had been anonymous for 5 years. She could go to the grocery store. She could walk her dog. She was just her. Now, that life was over. The ghost was back in the machine. The hurricane was here, and she was standing in the absolute center of it, wondering if she remembered how to breathe in the storm. The following week, the anticipation was unbearable. The building was sold out. The rating was expected to be the highest in years. She was scheduled to speak for the first time. The music hit. The pop was, again, enormous. But this time it was different. It wasn't the shock of a surprise. It was the expectation of greatness. She walked to the ring, no pyro this time, just a microphone. The crowd chanted her name. "Welcome back. You still got it." That chant. You still got it. It sounds like support. But it's really a question. It's a test. She stood in the center of the ring, absorbing it. And for the first time, she looked nervous. Because she wasn't just competing against the champion, she was competing against the memory of herself. The her that retired 5 years ago was perfect. She was at her athletic peak. She was flawless, undefeated, a myth. But the her standing in the ring now was 5 years older. Her knees hurt. Her back was stiff. She had ring rust. She was human. How can a person compete with a ghost? How can reality ever live up to the legend that was built in her absence? Every move she made would be compared to the past. Every promo she cut would be measured against her legendary speeches. The crowd didn't want the woman. They wanted the icon. They wanted the flawless hero they remembered. And as she looked at the thousands of faces, she realized the impossible truth. She could do everything right, and it still might not be enough. The return was the boom. Now. The echo. Before she could even speak, the music hit. Not her music. The champion's music. The Empress walked out, her title belt polished to a mirror shine. She didn't look shocked anymore. She looked furious. She looked offended. She circled the icon in the ring like a shark. The crowd booed her, but she fed on it. "You left," the champion hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You left. When it got hard, when the pressure was too much, you took your ball and you went home." The crowd erupted. The icon stood, stoic. "And while you were gone," the champion continued, "I built this. I carried this. I showed up, night after night, broken bones and all. I made this title the most important thing in this entire industry." She got nose to nose with the icon. "This is my division. This is my era. And this is my ring. You are a ghost. You are a memory. And I am the present." The champion didn't attack her. She didn't throw a punch. She did something far more devastating. She just turned, and she left. She left the icon standing there, alone, with the entire world watching. She had completely reframed the narrative. The returning hero was now the invader. The celebrated legend was now the entitled veteran, trying to take a spot she hadn't earned. The champion didn't win a fight. She won the story. And the icon hadn't said a single word. She just watched her go, the microphone heavy in her hand, the chants of the crowd suddenly sounding very, very distant. The feel-good moment was over. Now the reality set in. The entire company became a two-person show, the icon and the champion. No one else mattered. The rest of the women's division, they simply ceased to exist. Their storylines were dropped. Their matches were cut for time, replaced by video packages hyping the two titans. We often focus on the stars, on the main event. We rarely see the collateral damage. We don't see the woman who had been clawing her way up the mid-card for 3 years, who was finally supposed to get her first title shot, being told her match was cancelled. Indefinitely. We don't see the rising star, who the company had been building as the next big thing, suddenly becoming an afterthought. Her momentum, gone. Resentment began to fester backstage. It wasn't the icon's fault. It wasn't even the champion's fault. It was the fault of the story. The story was too big. It sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The champion, once the despised villain, started to gain a quiet, sympathetic following in the locker room. Her words in the ring, they were right. She did show up. She did build this. The icon's return, that massive, joyous explosion, it had a cost. It destabilized an entire ecosystem. It was a sun so bright it burned everything else around it. It created the single biggest match in the company's history. But it also created a dozen broken careers and a locker room divided. The brightest light casts the darkest shadow. Months later, the grandest stage, the main event, the icon versus the champion. It was a war, brutal, emotional, perfect. In the end, the icon won. She hit her legendary finisher, the 1, 2, 3. The crowd exploded. The confetti fell. The pyro went off. She held the title high, crying. The champion was defeated. The story was over. The ghost had reclaimed her throne. It was the perfect ending. But the story wasn't over. We see her hours later. The arena is empty. The confetti is being swept up. She's in her street clothes, the title belt in a duffel bag. She's not celebrating. She's not on the phone. She's walking, purposefully, down a corridor she hasn't been in for years. She stops at a private office. A name on the door. The chairman. He's supposed to be retired. Long gone. She enters without knocking. The old man is there, sitting in the dark, watching a small monitor. He doesn't turn around. "Is it done?" he asks, his voice frail. She drops the duffel bag on his desk. She unzips it. She doesn't take the belt out. She just looks at it. "It's done," she says. Her voice is flat, empty. "She built a dynasty," the old man mused. "But it wasn't your dynasty. It wasn't my dynasty. It had to be corrected. The legacy had to be secured." The icon nods slowly. "I came back. I fixed it. The right name is on the lineage." She turns and walks to the door. "Where are you going?" the old man asks. She stops, her hand on the knob. She doesn't turn around. Home. She walks out, leaving the championship, the fame, and the noise behind. The return was never about the fans. It was never about the glory. It wasn't a comeback. It was a corporate hit, a final binding act of loyalty to the man who made her, to erase the one who had dared to replace her. The perfect ending was just the beginning of a different, darker story.